today. I have no backup.
Tightrope.
Yeah. All right. I'm looking for 5 faces, at least, the planning committee on the screens before we start. It is 9:30. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, perfect. All right. Welcome, everyone, to our planning committee for Monday, November the 8th. We acknowledge that Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence sont enrichies et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. Today, November 8th, is World Town Planning Day, also known as World Urbanism Day. This is an international day celebrating the accomplishments of planners and their contributions to their communities. So this is a good opportunity today to say thank you to our professional planners, both in the public sector and the private sector, for all of their contributions to our community on World Town Planning Day. We have no regrets today. Eric, can we do a roll call, please?
Councillor Dudas. Oh, I see you on the screen, Councillor. Councillor Tierney.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Here.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Present.
Councillor Cloutier.
Present.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Chair Moffat.
Here.
Chair Gower.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Okay, thank you. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on November 24th, 2021, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Are there any declarations of interest today? I'm seeing none. Confirmation of minutes. We have minutes from the special joint meeting of Planning Committee and ARAC from October 14th, 15th, and 18th. That was on the official plan. Are the minutes confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you. And then minutes for the meeting of October 28th, 2021. Are the minutes confirmed?
Confirmed.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go through the agenda items. We will hold any items that where we have delegations or questions from councillors. The first item is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 1560 Scott Street in Kitchissippi. There is a deferral motion that Chair Moffat has.
Sorry, I forgot to communicate with, I think Councillor Leeper wanted to move that being
Okay, Kitchissippi Ward, Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. I understand there was a notification problem, so we'll be dealing with this at a subsequent meeting. I'll just go to the therefore be it resolved. The Planning Committee defer the report until the November 25th, 2021 Planning Committee.
On the deferral motion?
Carried.
Carried.
Carried. That motion is carried and deferred to November 25th. The second item is a zoning bylaw amendment for 2020 Walkley Road and 2935 Conroy Road. There are 2 registered delegations on this one, so we'll hold this item. Item number 3 is a zoning bylaw amendment for part of 2701 Longfields Drive. We have no public delegations. Do any of the committee members wish to hold this one? I'll ask the applicant, Jamie Posen is here. Jamie, if the committee is ready to carry this, do you wish to speak today on the item?
He's just coming online, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I was just joining when you were asking the questions, but presuming there's no questions or any other delegations, no, we don't need to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. So on item 3, zoning bylaw amendment for part of 2701 Longfields Drive, are the report recommendations carried?
Carried.
Carried. Okay. Item number 4 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 300 and 320 des Pères Blancs Avenue in Rideau Vanier. This is in Councillor Fleury's ward. And I know Madeleine Meyer, who's the interim general director of Vanier Museo Park, is also here. Councillor Fleury or Madame Meyer, did either of you wish to make any comments? We have no delegations registered for this one.
I don't know if Madeleine's on, but Chair, I'd love to just thank the Museo Park, who's been a partner hand in hand to see the rebuilt following the fire at the Sugar Shack of the city's museum, and we're very fortunate to have Madeleine taking the lead on the rebuild.
Okay, thank you. Madeleine, did you wish to speak this morning? I can see her on the list, so I'm not sure.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We-
Bonjour.
Okay, sorry about that. No, I don't wish to speak. I'm just here in case you have any question for me.
Okay, are there any questions from councillors on this one? Okay, thank you, Madeleine, for joining us. Thank you, Councillor Fleury. Are the report recommendations carried?
Carried.
Adopté.
Carried.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
We'll be looking forward to some maple syrup as soon as we can.
Okay, have a good
And-
day. Thanks.
Merci. And item number 5 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 380 Hunt Club Road in River Ward. There are no delegations registered. Are there any questions from councillors on this? I'm seeing none. Councillor Brockington, this is in your ward. Any comments?
No, the building already exists. This just allows a different use, which is a medical clinic and pharmacy, something we need. So fully supportive.
Okay. Are the report recommendations carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Carried. Thank you. And there's a IPD on the agenda for cash in lieu of parkland. Anyone interested in lifting that for discussion? Probably not. No. So that's it for the items. So we'll go back to items that we held. We held only one item, and that was a zoning bylaw amendment for 2020 Walkley Road and 2935 Conroy Road in Gloucester Southgate. So we do have a staff presentation. What we'll do is we'll begin with the staff presentation, then the applicant has a brief presentation, and then we'll go to public delegations. We have 4 people who are registered to speak. Then we'll have an opportunity to ask the applicant questions and staff questions. So we'll begin with the staff presentation. Sarah Ezio is here this morning from the city's planning staff. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair.
And
I'm Sarah Ezio. I'm the lead planner on this file, so I'll just wait for the presentation to be shared. Thank you. So the file that's before us today is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit a warehouse use on the site at 2020 Walkley and 2935 Conroy Road. That application is in Ward 10 and abutting Ward 18. Staff are recommending approval of the rezoning request, which would accommodate the development of of 3 new one-story warehouse buildings to be built in 3 phases. So here's the location of the site, which is at the southeast corner of the intersection of Walkley and Conroy Roads. The site is a rectangular shaped parcel with an area of 5.7 hectares and is currently developed with 2 buildings, a building to the north of the site containing a City of Ottawa Employment and Social Service Center, and a building to the south containing office uses. The site is situated within an industrial business park that extends to the east, south, and west, with the lands to the west of the site being known as the Ottawa Business Park. To the north is the established residential neighborhoods of Alta Vista and Elmville Acres, and across the road is an open space corridor retained for the Alta Vista Parkway. Next slide, please. The lands are designated as urban employment lands by the city's official plan. The employment the urban employment area is intended to provide sufficient areas for economic activity over the long term and provide large parcel sizes to accommodate user needs for storage, parking, and floor plates. These designations are usually in close proximities to highway interchanges or arterial roads corresponding with the urban truck route designation in order to facilitate the movement of goods. The urban employment area permits traditional industrial uses in the City of Ottawa, such as manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, storage, communications, and construction. Next slide, please. Here is Schedule E of the city's official plan, which illustrates the city's urban road network. The slide illustrates the city's arterial roads in red and collector roads in green. So you can see that the site is located with frontage on 2 designated arterial roads, Walkley and Conroy roads, and 1 collector road, St. Laurent Boulevard. Arterial roads are the longest travel routes in the city and are connected to other arterial and interchanges in order to provide the highest volume capacity. Arterial roads service the city's designated urban truck routes and link employment areas. The section of Walkley Road is also designated by Schedule C, the primary urban cycling network, as a spine route, and this section of Conroy is designated as a crosstown bikeway as well. Next slide, please. The site is zoned light industrial with an urban exception zone 1477, which is a site-specific exception zone. The zoning has an associated height schedule permitting heights greater than those permitted in the parent light industrial zone, and the site is subject to a holding symbol permitting greater gross floor area at such a time that the planned Alta Vista Parkway is constructed. The existing zoning permits a range of a number of uses that are shown on the screen here, such as recreational and athletic facility, research and development center, light industrial uses, office uses, and several others. Warehousing, meaning the storage and distribution of goods and equipment, is not currently permitted on the site. Next slide, please. The rezoning application is accompanied by a concurrent site plan application, with this slide showing the submitted proposed site plan. The site plan shows 3 warehouse buildings having a combined total gross floor area of 24,651 square meters. The future tenants of the warehouse buildings are not currently known at this time. The buildings are to be constructed in 3 phases, with the first phase being the southernmost warehouse on the site. At the final phase, the site plan will include a total of 291 surface parking spaces for vehicles and 32 loading spaces for trucks. The site will include 4 accesses with a right-in, right-out driveway on Walkley Road, 2 right-in, right-out driveways on Conroy Road, and a full access driveway on St. Laurent Boulevard. A transportation impact assessment was conducted in accordance with the approved TIA guidelines, and it shows that the redeveloped site would generate 44 vehicle trips, including both car and truck trips, during morning peak hour, with 46 during the afternoon peak hour. In order to proceed with the development, a rezoning is required to additionally permit a warehouse use on the site. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation is that Planning Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to permit a warehouse on the site. Staff are recommending that a maximum cap of the size of individual warehouse buildings be capped at 10,000 square meters of gross floor area. The rezoning will not affect the holding symbol currently on place on the site, nor the existing maximum height schedule. Next slide, please. Staff's review of the rezoning application has found that the proposed change aligns with applicable official plan policies for this area, including section 2.2.3 citywide employment area policies, 2.3.1 movement of goods policies, and 3.6.5 urban employment area policies. Together, these policies support the protection of land for traditional employment uses that require movement of goods, such as warehousing, at strategic locations close to arterial roads. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We have 4 public delegations registered, but before we go to the delegations, we do have the applicant. Murray Chown is representing Novatech. Murray, do you have a presentation for us this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do. If the committee coordinator could put that up, and just while he's doing that, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of procedural things before the clock starts ticking. Firstly, I wanted the members of committee to be aware of who else is with me this morning to answer questions for you. Mr. Stephen Nicoletti, Managing Director, Eastern Canada for Manulife Investment Management, who are the owners of the subject property, is supposed to be on this morning. I was scanning the list of participants and I unfortunately don't see his name, but hopefully he will be joining us. Erica Corden, who is the Director of Development for Canderel, is with us this morning. And Canderel are the project managers acting on behalf of Manulife. Jennifer Luong, transportation engineer from Novatech, is here, and although I will be making traffic comments in my presentation, Jennifer will be available to answer any questions from the committee members. And lastly, Jeff Kelly, a planner on my team from Novatech, is also with us. He's been the lead on this file. So, Mr. Chairman, all of us have not asked for 5 minutes to speak to the committee this morning. I don't expect my presentation to be much longer than 5 minutes, but I would hope that the chair would allow me to go a little bit longer than 5 minutes. I want to start by thanking Ms. Ezio and the presentation that she's made to the committee this morning and the report that she's written to the committee. My presentation actually is going to sound an awful lot like hers. I'd also like to thank Lily Zhu for her assistance on this file, and Mike Giampa, who's been intimately involved in the discussions dealing with any the traffic concerns associated with this project. This slide locates the site. We're all familiar with it. If I can go to the next slide, please. Just as Ms. Ezio indicated to the committee members, this project is or the zoning will allow for the development of 3 warehouses on this property to be developed in 3 phases. As Ms. Ezio indicated to you, each of these buildings is under 9,000 square meters, or just in the order of 90,000 square feet. In terms of concerns with respect to the scale of this project, I would remind committee members that Amazon warehouses tend to be in the order of 1 million square feet, so that each of these buildings is 1/10 of the size of an Amazon warehouse. We are not talking about that type of a use on this property. Next slide, please. Once again, the list of permitted uses under the zoning today. Wanted to particularly highlight that the existing zoning on the property already allows for light industrial uses, and research and development center as permitted uses on the property. The warehouse use, in terms of its form and function, will be very similar to the uses that are already existed under the current zoning for the property. Next slide, please. This is the exception provision for the zoning bylaw that places a cap of 60,385 square meters of gross floor area on the property today. I would remind the committee of Ms. Ezio's report and her presentation, where the total square footage or area that's being proposed for this site is 24,651 square meters, less than half of the total area that could be developed on this site as of right today. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we've heard some discussion about what the vision was for this property. That vision, or the understanding of that vision, goes back to a staff report to the City of Ottawa Planning Committee and Council in 1991. That's 30 years ago. That report to Planning Committee, as I read it, was the result of an application brought by Metropolitan Life, who were the owners of the subject property at that time. And they had a vision of a office complex on their property that would function as a gateway to the business park. The City of Ottawa owned the property on the west side of Conroy Road, and they jumped on the bandwagon. And so that the report that went to Planning Committee and Council in late 1991 and early 1992 recommended an increase in development potential on both these properties, with the thought that maybe it was a good spot for a gateway and some tall office buildings. So what you see here is the zoning that was passed at the time, and with respect to the subject site, that zoning is still in place today, allowing for buildings as tall as 36 meters or 12 stories in the area that's highlighted in yellow to create that gateway to this business park. Next slide, please. So this is what has been developed on the City of Ottawa property to implement that vision. An Esso gas bar, a combined Tim Hortons and Wendy's, and a Boston Pizza. With respect, that vision has never been realized and never will be realized on this property. We certainly don't think it's appropriate to suggest to our clients that they somehow have to fulfill that vision when the City of Ottawa has failed to do so on the lands that they owned. Next slide, please. Just looking quickly at the definitions for light industrial uses and warehouse uses, light industrial being permitted today, and a warehouse being the use that we are requesting through the zoning application. A light industrial use includes the manufacture, processing, assembly, or packaging of finished parts or finished products made from previously prepared materials, whereas a warehouse allows for the storage and distribution of goods and equipment. Quite frankly, between the two uses, I would think a light industrial use is more, will have more impact than a warehouse use. Next slide, please. This is an image of a light industrial building on Polytech Street. Next slide, please. This is an image of the proposed development on the property. From a visual and functional perspective, there is no difference between the permitted light industrial use and the proposed warehouse use. Next slide, please. Just to highlight the comment in the staff report and Ms. Ezio's presentation to the committee this morning, this image highlights all of the properties along Walkley Road and in the business park where warehousing is already a permitted use. We are not introducing a new use that isn't part of the fabric and list of permitted uses in the business park today. Next slide, please. Just quickly to look at the landscape plan. This is the landscape plan that was part of our second submission to the city for the site plan. I just want to point out that the number of trees on the site is going to increase as a result of the development. So this development will actually contribute to increasing the urban forest and the tree canopy in the City of Ottawa. Next slide, please. So just moving into the transportation comments, Ms. Ezio put up a schedule from the official plan, which shows the arterial streets and collector streets as designated in the official plan. We thought it would be important to put up this slide, which identifies the urban truck routes where full loads are permitted, highlighting that both Conroy and Walkley Road are full load truck routes. So this is a logical location for a warehouse development with direct access to those truck routes, and those truck routes in turn providing direct access to Highway 417. Next slide, please.
Rory, I'll give you one more minute to finish up.
I only have 2 slides left, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. So this chart highlights the vehicle trip generation for the proposed, or for the site and the proposed development. I want to draw the committee's attention to the first line, which is identified as the trip generation for the existing site. You'll see that in the AM peak hour, the total trips generated by the existing site is 116 trips, and the PM is 122. With a proposed development, you'll see the trip generation, the traffic generated by this site, reduced dramatically to 44 trips in the morning and 46 trips in the evening. And Ms. Luong will be able to answer any questions the committee have with respect to this chart. Last slide, please. There has been concerns raised by a number of councillors with respect to the safety for users of the bike lane that is located along the east side of Conroy Road. We have had discussions with staff about how we could address that through the site plan approval process. And what this slide illustrates in green at each of the entrances to Conroy Road and also at the channel for the right turn lane at Conroy and Walkley, where we would be considering installing green thermoplastic markings and signage to draw the attention to drivers to the bike lane and to protect the cyclists in the back in that bicycle lane. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that concludes my presentation. We strongly support the report that's before you this evening and the recommendations from staff to approve the addition of warehouse as a permitted use in the zone for this property. Thank you very much, and look forward to your questions later following the delegations from the public. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Murray. So we will come back later on for questions to the applicant team. So if we could have the cameras for the applicants turned off, and we will go to delegations in order. They're Martin, Ellie, Paul, Norris, Kathy Fisher, and Kael Shahaber. First up is Martin Ellie, representing South Keys Greenboro Community Association. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I think the key thing with this development is the location of it. It's not the access to the roads, which I understand. It's the injection of a lot of large vehicles into the neighbourhood of the junction, which is already bursting at the seams. And development to the south of this area continues to grow. This road is never going to get better. It's only going to get worse. This particular corner, it has been in keeping with the light industrial zoning of current buildings that have been there for quite a long time. We feel that moving to warehouses would not be consistent with the other entrances to the park, which certainly have buildings, office buildings, much more impressive. So the combination of the use of the corner and the traffic summarizes, if you like, the two reasons why we don't think this is the right thing to do. The biggest concern in the community is clearly the increase in truck traffic. So the numbers we just saw showed lower numbers, but those numbers don't necessarily reflect the higher proportion of large vehicles. There is a mix that's used in the TIA, which is predetermined, but there's some clear examples as to why large trucks in that area is not productive. The words we just heard about painting the green marking, I think that is progress, to be fair, to ignore it, to acknowledge that. However, that lane isn't integrated when you get to the junction of Walkley Road. The proponent did actually propose doing away with that bike lane and using the MUP on the opposite side of the road. There is no MUP along that side. It is a bike path, an ad hoc bike path, which is not integrated, and which you have to cross both Conroy and Walkley to get access to the northern parkway. So there's work to be done, a lot more than just green paint, to make the pathway, the bike paths safer today. And obviously with more trucks, there's more emphasis on that. Now, there are two areas where the city didn't address my comments. One is the MUP I just mentioned. The other was we saw on the map of access routes that it's clearly a good route to come from Hunt Club Road up Conroy to the warehouse. I don't think that was addressed in the TIA, and that's a concern for the whole of Conroy because it affects traffic, which is already pretty heavy along that road. I did see the city report for recommendation. There was two things in there. Sorry, since my review of the city report, I did see some concerns with the TI I hadn't noticed before. There is a driveway under Walkley, and some of the traffic from that development has been attributed to that exit. But another part of the same report says that exit isn't big enough for trucks because it's not wide enough. So it's worrying to find inconsistencies in the report, which weren't picked up by the city. The other piece is the diagram that I submitted with my written notes. I believe many of you have a copy of. It's from Appendix K of the TIA, and it shows how a truck turning right, which is the least intrusive maneuver, onto Conroy Road from the development, takes up 2 lanes and the bike lane before it can go right onto Walkley Road. I didn't even try to pull out what we see from a left turn at a busy time. There was some inconsistency in 2 of the city responses. One talked about five trucks in the AM, the other talked about 12. So again, the city review of the TIA, I'm concerned as to whether that job has been done properly because things are not consistent. So I do understand the planning rules and what you can do, but it doesn't make any sense to me to approve a change in use for this particular location when there's so many traffic issues that don't, in my view, been properly addressed
1 minute
consistently.
left.
So that concludes my remarks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Are there any questions from committee members or councillors? Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for your delegation. I just, Martin, I wanted to talk about some of the inferences in the traffic impact assessment, because you've mentioned traffic in your delegation around the Alta Vista transportation corridor. Do you have some knowledge of that potential road build and what the city has been discussing lately with regard to that corridor?
It's been talked about for as long as I've lived in this part of the city, which is since 1982. So I wouldn't hold my breath on it happening. I think that would improve things because it would allow better continuity through that junction. If the development has a precondition of that road going in, then that might help with the traffic. But I don't think that in the future contributes anything until we can be certain it's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the issue, is that the current discussions are more around, if anything, there a transit serviced road, not one for large trucks, heavy trucks, and particularly not through prime green space, through people's backyards, over a river, through a major park area into connecting with the Queensway. This is the issue with it. So I think your concerns are well stated, that there has been a shift in the type of thinking around that production of a 4-lane roadway through that area. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. If I may, which street do you live on? I've been looking at this for a few days and I'm just trying to understand who is going to object to what. Yeah, I don't need your address, obviously, but just help me orient you.
I live just off Bank Street in the area of South Keys, Greenborough. Our neighbourhood stretches from Bank Street to Conroy. And basically there's 2 choices for going north. One is Bank Street and the other is Conroy.
Okay.
So it limits at the edge of our association stops at Conroy. I know we have speakers from Hunt Club Park. They're on the other side of Conroy, so they have the same concerns. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I'm sorry I missed that you were representing the community association.
No problem.
No worries. Thank you.
Martin, could you just clarify something you said? You referred to the MUP on the east side of Conroy Road, and you called it an ad hoc bike path more than an actual MUP. Now, I understand the crossing on the eastern side of that intersection, there is none because there's no pedestrian or bike crossing there. So you do have to do
Western
but-
side, I think you mean.
pardon me, you're right. The western side, there is no lights. The eastern side, there is. Can you just clarify what you meant by an ad hoc bike path rather than being a MUP?
I've used that path on numerous occasions, and as far as I can see, it is a sidewalk where cycling is tolerated. There's no signs, there's no line down the middle like an MUP. There is no integration at the roads that it crosses before it gets to Walkley. So there's no warning for drivers. There's no indications of any features of an MUP that I've ever seen. So I believe it's tolerated because it's there. It's not heavily used by pedestrians. People are encouraged to use it, but I don't believe it has any real provisions that make it anything like an MUP. And as you say, at the top end, it's disconnected. If they cut off the path on the right-hand side, then that makes the situation even worse. I hope that answered the question. Thank you.
Yep. I'm seeing no more questions from councillors, so thank you, Martin. Next up, we have Paul Norris representing the Hunt Club Park Community Association. Good morning, Paul.
Hi. So yeah, I'm president of the Hunt Club Park Community Association, and we're on the right side of Conroy. And Martin did a great job, as he always does, nailing down the main issues. And what I want to speak to is, and thank you for the idea of having green paint on the floor on the pavement. That'll help. Our big issue is traffic flow, and the two right ends off of Conroy. Because what happens, yes, Conroy and Walkley are connected to the 417 and all that wonderful stuff. But for the right end, so the heavy truck traffic would come off Conroy, off 417, for example, onto Hunt Club, travel down Hunt Club, which is an extremely heavy route, and it's a broken road. Turn right onto Conroy, go down Conroy, and then there are the two right ends. So we have issues there with the right ends across with the bike lanes has been addressed. And as Martin rightly pointed out, when a truck turns in, it's not just it's not a Honda Civic turning in, it's a truck. So it'll slow things down and cause more issues. And we really don't want to have issues, not today, but maybe in the future as more trucks go down, as more traffic was in there, like happened on Bank Street at the Bank and Riverside, where all of a sudden there were accidents, one or two a year, and it turned out to be a really bad mix of truck traffic and bicycles and cars. So that's the one issue there, and the right out onto Walkley is great, but again, it's a right out, goes down to the arterial road. So the main route for truck traffic will be down Hunt Club and Conroy, and that's our biggest concern. The other issue is the space. The applicant mentioned at one of the first meetings that they were going to have boutique warehouses, which to me suggested they were going to have small production studios, small hair, Mary mentioned small hairdressing salons or whatever, boutique use in that. I got the impression that strategy may well have changed since his first comments. So to me, it's going to be, I would make an assumption that it's going to probably larger warehouse facilities, which they have the reduced number of trucks or vehicles, but again, they're 50 trucks versus 100 cars. It's a lot more intrusive. So that's our big concern, is that it's a different use for the area, because we've been the area, I've been here since 92. I grew up in Ellenville Acres. The area was always going to be a premier park. Yes, there were going to be office buildings. That's great. Yes, there were changes. There was supposed to be a Loblaws across the street by the Esso and that whole area, but 2008 economic meltdown killed that. So yes, there's been ideas, but the park itself has done really well with that good light industrial use, production studios, embassies, insurance companies, whatever. Having large warehouse facilities kilometers away from the major 417 route, when there are warehouse facilities closer to the 417, seems to me it's not a appropriate use. I think that it's great. We do need the warehouse space. We desperately need that warehouse space. Should be closer to the 417 and not causing traffic to come in up Hunt Club and up Conroy and affecting residential areas, because we do have a significant amount of traffic on Hunt Club. Again, traffic, but Hunt Club is a mess. Conroy is getting to be a mess. Our friends from Findlay Creek are coming in. And there's more development south, as everybody knows. So there's more traffic coming up because Bank Street's a broken street. So that's our big issue is warehouse space and trucks and right turn-in lanes off of Conroy. It just won't, for us, it doesn't work. If they could look at, it won't work. It'll cause issues. And I'll be quiet from there. That's our big concerns. And Kathy will address other ones.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. Are there any questions from committee members or councillors? I'm seeing none. Let's move on to Kathy Fisher as our next speaker, and I'm actually going to hand over the chair to Chair Moffat for the next couple of delegations. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all members of the committee. I'm Kathy Fisher, and I'm a longstanding resident of the area of Hunt Club Park. I've lived there for 32 years. I'm also on the Hunt Club Park Community Association. I'm also the coordinator of Neighborhood Watch. I've served on community safety committees. So the reason for my deputation this morning is just to give you a sense of what I am experiencing and also what other folks in our community are experiencing. And Councillor Leeper, you had asked Martin where he lived. I'll tell you where I live. My exit from the community is Conroy and Johnson. And this has become a very busy intersection. And I support all the comments that were made by Martin and by Paul. But what I want to sort of give you a sense of is what it's like to live in that part and exiting the community from Johnson and Conroy, where there is already increased traffic. And there are accidents. There was an accident, a significant accident last weekend. And what you're dealing with when you have increased traffic, and that's happening right now, when you're getting folks that are frustrating and they've been sitting in traffic, so they're trying to make those lights. And some folks are making some of their decisions, traffic decisions are dangerous. So what you can expect from having entrances from Conroy to this new site is you're going to increase the traffic, regardless if it's by 30, by 40, by 50, you are increasing the traffic and you're increasing the frustration. And so you are going to have more, there is potential, I should say, for more accidents. And also exiting your community. That's our exit to get to hospitals. And for many of us who are in the community, we need to get to those hospitals. And from my experience, this is very important to our family, where I have to be able to get to either CHEO or to the general hospital very quickly. And that is hampered at this particular point in time. So that's the perspective that I wanted to share with you this morning. And also to support the comments, given that I'm a member as well of the Community Association for Hunt Club Park. So thank you all for this time and for hearing our concerns in the community. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Nice to see you again. Any questions? Any questions for Ms. Fisher? Seeing none, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kael Shahaber.
We aren't seeing him online, Chair. I'm not sure if he is online. He may raise his hand, but we're not seeing him in the attendee list.
Okay, then. All right, then that is, as far as I can tell, that was our last delegation. So we will move now to questions to the applicant. And for that, I think we have attendants, Murray Chown, who already spoke, Jeff Kelly, Jennifer Luong with Novatech as well, Stephen Nicoletti with Manulife, and Eric Corden with Canderel. Questions. So we start with Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. And I'll just pick up on the point that was made by the first delegation with respect to the difference between a number of vehicle trips versus the heavy truck trips. So I wrote that down as well. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of more intensive trip generator uses that could go into this site. And it's a relatively low volume of trips that you're anticipating. But how many of those trips are going to be heavy truck traffic? Because that's the chief concern that I have with approving this today.
Mr. Chair, I will ask Jennifer Luong to address that question if she could, please.
Sure. So in our traffic study, we do identify that the overall trips associated with this use are in the order of 45 vehicles in the peak hour. So of those 45, we do anticipate between 5 and 8 truck trips during those peak hours.
Okay. No, that's good. Thank you.
If I just might add to that, in terms of the total number of truck movements on the street at that time, it's a very, very low percentage. I think it's like less than 5% increase in total truck movements at that intersection.
Yes, the existing percent heavy vehicles at the Walkley-Conroy intersection today during peak hours is 4 or 5% at the whole intersection. And the amount of truck traffic that this site is adding is about 0.2%.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Cloutier.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the delegation, and we've met, and I appreciate the information you provided me. This in Councillor Dean's ward, but it impacts my residents more than hers, given the proximity right across the street, the Canterbury community, and Marie, thank you. You showed some pictures. You don't happen to have a picture of the 30 or so truck bays that are contemplated for here, do you?
They are illustrated on the site plan and the landscape plan that we included in our presentation. I don't know if the committee coordinator wants to put, maybe he could put the landscape plan back up.
Noted, thank you.
If you want to go back to the landscape plan, Eric, if you could. There we go. So this illustrates the loading bays that are located between Warehouse 1 and Warehouse 2, accessible both from Saint Laurent Boulevard and from Conroy Road. And then the loading bays for the last warehouse would be accessible from Conroy, Walkley, and Saint Laurent.
I think all the loading bays would be able to exit onto Walkley, would they not, with the right out?
If they were headed towards the 417, yes, they would.
Yep, they would. Okay. So thank you for that. So I just wanted to, Murray, you showed the picture you showed, but there are 30 or so truck bays that are contemplated for this. And Sarah, Ms. Nezio, commented in the report a relatively small number of truck bays. It's 30 truck bays that will be contemplated. And also with respect to the traffic study, it's 44 additional trucks per hour. That's almost 1 per minute that we're contemplating. And thank you, Councillor Leeper, for pointing out the difference between vehicular traffic, if that's it, or truck traffic. And I will also point out to members of the committee that this is on a BRT route, a potential BRT route, a future BRT route, not potential, that it's in the transportation master plan, where people that might access that employment center would come by sustainable transportation. The delegations pointed out the great MUPs that are accessible along the corridor, along the contemplated Alta Vista transportation corridor. Those MUPs exist now, and people might might access the employment center by sustainable transportation. That is not true if we approve these additional 44 trucks per hour. Just point out, as has been said, green paint does not protect cyclists. Access to the pathway needs to be protected, and green paint won't do it. We talked about the Alta Vista Transportation Corridor, which will be reviewed as part of the Transportation Master Plan, but the access that contemplates to the city, and I will say that is never contemplated for a truck route. I won't permit that into downtown using the Alta Vista Transportation Corridor. And so I'm simply asking my colleagues to not approve this because of the bus rapid transit, the extension of the baseline bus rapid transit that is post 2031 to go to Walkley, to Heron and Walkley, the cycling lanes that connect the community along those routes. We just need to consider a better utilization of our transportation network, even when we're looking at future needs and designs. And so I am not convinced, and I will be voting no on this application, that the warehouse of this nature is the best use of that land space there. It is not permitted, and given the future strategies of the area. And so my residents also have concerns about the truck traffic, the vibrations, the noise, and that. And so with that, Chair, I'm asking my colleagues to not approve this application. And I thank you for the time.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I want to be abundantly clear about the trip.
There was no question.
Truck trip generation.
Murray, there wasn't a question there. Sorry.
But the councillor indicated 44 trips in the peak hour, and that's absolutely
Again,
wrong.
it's not a debate, right? There's no question there. Councillor Cluche didn't ask you a question. I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Councillor Cluche. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few questions for the proponent, the applicant, and that is about the demand for warehouses. Can you talk to the committee about current and future demand for warehouses? We talked about plans 30 years ago, but we evolve as a society, and I'd like to have a better understanding of warehouse demand. And the second part of my question is, why not near highway interchange instead of bringing it into an urban core? Maybe this question's better for the city planner in a second. I know this is your proponent's property and it's available, but talk to me about warehouses and talk to me why you think it's appropriate to bring it this far in off the highway.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll turn that question over either to Steve Nicoletti or Eric Corden. I'm not sure which one of them would like to respond just in terms of the market demand for this use. In terms of location, certainly they can comment, but I may want to add something in response to that question if I may. So either Steve or Eric.
I'm happy to speak to that. Good morning, everyone. So just with respect to the first part of that question in terms of demand for warehouse and just industrial facilities throughout the city of Ottawa, it's been seen and reported widely with respect to the demand that there is in the market that currently I think there's only about 2% availability across the entire market in Ottawa with respect to industrial facilities, whether that be warehouse or light industrial or otherwise. So there's a true depth of demand here. And there always has been, in fact, for the city of Ottawa, where we've looked at CBRE reports. So CBRE is a national real estate brokerage firm that looks at market trends in all the major cities across Canada. And in their reporting, in their analysis, what they've discovered is that in terms of the amount of square feet of industrial or warehouse space per person in the major municipalities in Canada, Ottawa ranks the lowest out of the seven major municipalities or major cities. So Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary, places like Waterloo as well. Ottawa sits at 22 square feet of industrial space per person. The national average is close to 100. Montreal sits at about 70 square feet of industrial space per person. Toronto, 124. So Ottawa ranks the lowest in terms of the amount of industrial space per person across the country in the major municipalities. And then beyond that, the stock of the industrial space in Ottawa is also the oldest out of those same cities as well, where on average the stock of industrial space here is about 1970s vintage. So there's a true demand, again, 2% availability, and what is available is outdated and in need of upgrading. So we think that this meets a market need to help support the economic growth of the city and support the business community.
So if I may add, and with respect to the question as to why here, I would remind the committee of the figure that we had in my presentation showing all of the properties that are already zoned for a warehouse use in this business park along the south side of Walkley Road. We aren't introducing a new use into a neighborhood where the use isn't already permitted. And secondly, if you were to go back and look at the truck route figure that was part of my presentation, this site is very close to the Walkley 417 interchange. It's not embedded in the urban area of the city of Ottawa. It's got good access to the 417. It's an area already characterized by warehouse uses.
Okay, thank you for that. My other question is regarding the estimates for truck traffic. Can your traffic specialist elaborate on her estimates? How are they derived? How do we know that they are going to be accurate when you don't know who exactly is moving into the center? So can I have some information on that, please?
So our estimates are based on industry standard rates. So ITE produces manuals for all different kinds of uses that we use regularly in our TIAs to estimate traffic, particularly when a specific user isn't known. When you do know a specific user, it's possible to estimate from first principles, but that's not the case here. So we did use our industry standard rates to estimate both the total traffic, including cars, everything, as well as the truck trips.
You were pretty specific though with your estimates. I mean, it's possible that the companies that come in once the center is built could generate a lot more traffic. I guess as demand in Ottawa continues to evolve and then the demand continues to go up, I'm just worried that I've seen in the past with other developments estimates that were X and then in reality that were much higher. And so the fears that are being expressed by the local councillors and community leaders, particularly about traffic, will only be further worsened if that's the case. So you believe your estimates are going to be fairly accurate to reality?
I do. And I understand the fear of warehousing and what kind of warehousing. Will there be distribution? Will there be logistics? Will there be sortation? What kind? Based on the layout of this site, it's 3 buildings with truck courts and parking along the side. So the layout itself precludes a big user from coming in and operating the site, as one large building and having trucks come and go that way, shift work, that kind of thing. So the layout of the site itself supports, the assumptions that we're making.
Fair enough. Okay, I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Meehan.
Good morning. Thank you. We just went through a similar exercise in my ward in terms of rezoning for a warehouse, a large warehouse. And we're starting to get questions now from staff regarding exactly when the transportation impact study was conducted. And I see anyone who knows this area, Conroy, Walkley, Hunt Club, knows this is a very, very busy area. So I'm going to ask, I want specifically to ask exactly when the traffic impact study was done. Was it pre-pandemic, when traffic was a heck of a lot worse than it is right now? I mean, I think it's worse, it's bad now, but it's going to be even worse. Was the traffic impact study done pre-pandemic or during the pandemic?
So the traffic study was done during the pandemic. The traffic counts that it is based on are pre-pandemic.
But you say you're making assumptions and you're estimating.
Yes.
Has anyone gone out there and sat and watched? I'm kind of a hands-on person. You got to go and look at a situation. Something that you see on a computer is totally different than what the residents are enduring in a neighborhood. I question anything that's done during the pandemic as not being a realistic estimate. And I don't like the word estimate, because traffic is a reality. We're not estimating traffic, it's a reality. And 44 trucks an hour is going to have an awful impact on this area.
And just to clarify the number of trucks, Councillor Leeper had asked us specifically that question, and it was answered. The total traffic, including cars and everything, is 45 per hour. The amount of trucks is less than 10. So 5 to 8 is what, our book rates give us based on square footage, but less than 10.
Less than 10. The traffic impact is cars and trucks is what, 44?
Yeah, that's everyone.
44 where specifically?
To and from the site, distributed, in different directions. So the trucks themselves, we anticipate, of course, to have a bigger draw to the highway, but general traffic, if this is a tile shop, if this is a flooring shop, someone coming in to look at something in a showroom, those people are going to come from whichever direction. So that traffic is spread more evenly.
And that traffic will go onto Walkley Road.
And Conroy, yes.
Yeah. And what does the traffic on Walkley Road look like at those peak hours right now, minus the trucks traffic that will be coming out of the warehouses?
Right. So yes, to your original point, the traffic study is based on pre-pandemic numbers, because it's worst case. If we wanted to go and collect counts right now, it wouldn't be as bad as it was pre-pandemic. Nobody knows post-pandemic what it will be yet, but we have taken worst case and we've looked at the intersection operations based on pre-pandemic, when, to us, that's when it was the worst, right? So yes, we've looked at that, and that's included in the traffic study.
So the wait times along Walkley Road are factored into this when people are sitting at those lights?
Yes.
And you think it's the estimates, your estimates would make this would be a reasonable addition to that traffic right now?
It certainly is, because it's a massive reduction compared to the uses that are there today. This will be much less traffic.
Well, you're estimating. As someone who lives in these neighborhoods and travels these neighborhoods, I can't imagine this being any better. But I'll leave you with that. And all the roads around Walkley, Conroy, Hunt Club, the traffic impact studies were all done pre-pandemic.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's something for councillors to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. And this is a question to anybody, Chair. It's not just reserved for one particular group.
It's for the applicant.
Oh, it's the applicant? Okay. I have questions. Well, I have one question for the applicant. I have questions for staff. For the applicant, is there an end goal here in terms of what we're going to be seeing in terms of the end use for the warehouse? Do we know what's projected here to come in?
I'll let Mr. Corden answer that question.
Yeah, happy to speak to that. So just to be clear, as of today, we don't have an end user for the site. We certainly have an idea of the types of groups that we think that this would appeal to, but we don't have an end user that we're in discussions with, or that we've concluded anything with, or anything of that nature. So the intention here is really to appeal to the broadest range of users possible. So warehouse use would just be one of a number of uses that we'd look to have permitted for the site. And in terms of the types of uses or groups that we would have in mind, I can picture a tiling company, as Ms. Long mentioned earlier, that may have a small showroom at the front and a warehouse use at the back. Perhaps an interior design company that, again, same thing, showroom front, storage in the back. Picture the Maytag repair person that has a larger warehouse somewhere outside of the city or further out, and needs to come in and grab some parts and pieces to service their clientele in the area. One of the groups that we unfortunately were too late in terms of when this project could ultimately be developed potentially to address their needs, but the Ottawa Hospital was looking for storage for their PPE. That was a use that we thought would have fit well here. So all those types of uses are what we might hopefully see one day on the site.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Deans.
Mr. Chair, I have no questions. I just wanted to speak. Is this the appropriate time?
Well, we're going to go to questions to staff after this, and then closing comments can be made at that time. So seeing no further questions to the applicant, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. And I'll pass it back to my colleague, Councillor Gower.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we'll go to questions for staff. We can go to, if anyone has general wrap up, we can keep that to the end. So we'll go to questions for staff right now. Councillor Brockington is the first hand up.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'd like to hear from our staff's transportation unit, their comments about the estimates that the applicant has provided as part of their application.
Chair, excuse me, Chair, will ask Mr. Jianpa to respond.
Thank you, Lily. Mr. Chair, we've reviewed the trip generation estimates, and yes, they are estimates because they are proposed, and we typically do that for every TIA that triggers the trip generation warrant, and we have no issues. They are based on Institute of Transportation Engineer methodology, and we have reviewed them, and we have no concerns with the 44 or 45 vehicles per hour.
Okay, thank you for that. Going back to a question I raised, or a thought I raised during my question and answer with the applicant, and that is, sorry, the appropriate location for warehouses in urban settings as opposed to hugging highway interchanges, a discussion we recently had with the Gloucester South Nepean application. So I'd like to hear from planning staff. Let me ask the question backwards. Where would it be inappropriate to place warehouses in the urban setting?
Thank you, Chair. So the official plan policies have provide a very clear direction on where employment areas should be supported, and it's locations close to major goods movement facilities and corridors. So those locations that do not have access to major goods movement facilities and corridors would not permit employment uses. This site has direct access to Walkley, which is an arterial providing direct access to the 417. So this are policies in 2.3.1 of our official plan. Movement of goods states that the city will minimize the impact of truck traffic on residential neighborhoods by ensuring the availability of a comprehensive truck route network based on the arterial road system. So this site is located with access onto two arterial roads that are both designated as urban truck routes in our city. So the designation does allow for uses such as warehouses and promotes it and identifies it as the best location for these uses within our city.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, the property located on two main arterial roads, Walkley goes direct to the Queensway. That is, I guess, an attractive component of this application in the eyes of planning. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything a part of their original application that planning pushed back on and had to be revised, whether it was entry exit points to the property or anything else that was proposed? Was anything significantly changed from the original submission?
In terms of transportation, there was a change made on the second submission, and that was in relation to an access on Conroy. So the second access, it was proposed initially to be a full motion access, and in the second submission, it was changed to be a right in, right out only.
Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you for your answers. Thank you.
I see Lily Zhu put her hand up. Lily?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add to Sarah's response to Councillor Brockington's question. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application. There is a site plan control application as well. Staff circulated and reviewed both applications concurrently. Through the application review process, some improvements has been made to the application, including enhance the landscaping at the corner, southeast corner of Conroy and Walkley. Sarah mentioned the restriction of 2 access points at the Conroy Road. I think staff also pushed for the improvement and treatment safety measures at most of the access points where it intersects with cycle lanes, as shown on one of the previous presentations. Lots of those improvements will be implemented through the site plan. In addition, the maximum cap of the each individual warehouse use was also proposed and suggested by staff, which we believe will minimize the concern on the volume and size of the uses. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Councillor Brockton, any more questions? Okay, Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Question for staff around future transportation routes here. If the Alta Vista Transportation Corridor is built, and that's a big if, just given where conversations are, would it, in its present configuration, allow for heavy truck traffic in that north-south corridor?
Thank you, Chair, for your question. I would like to ask Mike Diampa to speak to this one, if he's able to.
Actually, Chair, I can take that question. It's VVG here. So the Alta Vista Transportation Corridor, when we did the environmental assessment for it, it was intended to be like a parkway. So it was not intended to have heavy traffic on it. There would be cycling, there'd be other active transportation facilities on it. It would be landscaped along that corridor. So that was the plan in the EA. As you know, we are doing the Transportation Master Plan update, so we will review the function, but I don't think the intention would be to put more heavy truck traffic into that facility. So we're looking at more sustainable transportation options for our entire network, because we have now new policies, climate change, master plan, all those things that we need to tie in together with the transportation network, also recognizing that we still have growth in the city, and that there will still be car use, but we will look at how all these things balance. It's a very tricky exercise, but we will have time to do that. Right now, we're working on the policies of the transportation master plan, so I can't have an answer for you about the use of that AVTC.
Thank you, Ms. G. That's very helpful, and in line with my understanding as well. I guess in relation to the application, it was mentioned in our staff presentation that that's a potential for the future, and it could assist in terms of some of the warehouse use here. And that's where the overlapping concern comes in. I don't see heavy truck traffic ever going there, as Councillor Puche has also said. I'm doubting that there'll be traffic at all in terms of that corridor in the future, and the reliance on it for an application of this sort probably premature. Is there any holding conditions that are discussed as part of this in terms of other build outs or rapid transit or anything like that that's been put in place here?
Thank you, Chair. So as part of the original rezoning on the site back in 1991, there were two holding provisions added to the site. The first one has been lifted with the criteria for that one. It permitted an additional gross floor area on the site. There is another holding provision on the site, and that will be lifted when the Alta Vista Parkway is constructed, and that one will allow an additional 23,225 square meters to be developed on the site, which is well over what the application is proposing today.
Okay, I just want on that last point, how reliant is this application on the AVTC being built as a 4-lane roadway with some transit access and car access in that case?
Thank you. So it is not at all reliant on that corridor. The submitted TIA and all analysis did not use that corridor for any of the analyses. So it was based on the existing transportation networks.
Okay, but there is a holding condition associated with it?
Yes, and that is that was on the original zoning. So this application essentially does not sort of touch that, and that will be continued to be placed on the site.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Menard. I have a few questions for staff. So warehousing generally in Ottawa and in other municipalities is defined as a light industrial use, not a heavy industrial use. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And currently this piece of land, the zoning allows for light industrial, but a specific exception against warehousing. We've heard that already. Light industrial on this site, manufacturing, processing, and assembly is currently allowed on this site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the difference between those activities and a warehouse, I guess, is storage and distribution. Some degree of storage must be allowed for manufacturing, but storage isn't the primary use in manufacturing. And clearly, manufacturing and processing and assembly would have distribution, but that's not necessarily the primary use. For the other uses, say a printing facility, which is specifically allowed on this land, would there be any limit to the number of truck bays allowed in a building like this?
No, there would not be.
Are there any other uses where there'd be a limit to truck bays in the facility?
No.
Okay. And then we've heard earlier the highest peak hour truck trips would be fewer than 10 additional truck trips. So there is some impact by changing the allowable use, and that's in likely the distribution part of the warehouse, but it's fewer than 10 truck trips in the highest peak hour.
That is correct.
Okay, so I think that's important whenever we are considering a change of use. What is the impact from that change of use? I wanted to ask also about the 10,000 square meter cap that you've come up with. That's higher than each of the 3 buildings that they're proposing. Did you consider at all having a cap that's closer to what they're proposing, so lower than 10,000 to better shrink wrap what they've proposed for the site plan?
Yes, that was considered and discussed with the applicant, and ultimately it was decided to do to impose the 10,000 square meter GFA cap in order to provide a little bit of flexibility, recognizing that we're currently at the rezoning stage, and the details of the site plan will be ironed out later once we've once the design has been finalized. So we just wanted to add a little bit of flexibility, but have the same intent to sort of manage and mitigate the size of the use.
And the height restrictions aren't changing. So if the zoning allows in certain parts of the site for more than one story, at some point in the future, this applicant could pursue that, I suppose. Is that correct?
Yes, and they would still have the 10,000 square meter GFA cap added to the warehouse use, but for all the other uses, that cap wouldn't be there, and they could build up to the height schedule. And yes.
Okay. And my last question, I guess it's not specific to this zoning bylaw amendment in front of us. It's more to, in general, transportation planning. That intersection of Walkley and Conroy is not functioning very well for cyclists and pedestrians. There is that odd jog that people using the pathway on the west side have to make to connect up to the other side of Walkley Road. Are there any plans? Has this been evaluated for, I think this would be a great location, for example, for a protected intersection, but what are the current near-term plans for any improvements for pedestrians cycling safety at Walkley and Conroy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry.
Chair, I'll respond quickly and I'll ask Mr. Jampa to add to it. So staff did explore the opportunities to improve that cycle track crossing at intersection. Our colleagues from local improvement teams do not recommend it to be a priority, and I'll ask Mike to add to the reasons as why. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Mr. Chair, yes, everything Lily said is correct. It is not in the immediate plans of our transportation planning group to do any work at that intersection. It would require a complete reconstruction of the intersection to make it protected, bike signals, bike detectors, possibly removing the right turn channels. There's some significant work that would be required there, and unfortunately, it's not a very high priority. So.
Okay. Yeah, perhaps it should be, given even without this development, clearly there's improvements needed there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Councillor Deans, did you have questions, or is your hand up for a wrap up? For wrap up, I want to make sure we give Councillor Deans the last wrap up. Is there any other questions for staff or councillors who wish to wrap? Councillor Cloutier on wrap up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I guess at the beginning, not knowing how you wanted to manage the meeting, I had my councillors to my questions to the proponent, to staff, and my wrap up all went in one. So I apologize for not following along. Just again, want to reiterate to my colleagues that I support Councillor Deans in her concerns about this project, and and we heard about just the overall structure, all the conditions that are at Conroy and Walkley, adjacent to a really outstanding pathway system, and the introduction of this type of usage at this site of 2020 Walkley Road, I don't think is in keeping with that. And also, again, just reiterating briefly, the future bus rapid transit that will be along there, and the additional cycling facilities that will be along there on Walkley Road. And so I thank you for allowing me the chance to do a final wrap up. And I'm asking my colleagues to vote no on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues, and thank you for your consideration of this application. I am here this morning to ask you to vote no to the rezoning application for 2020 Walkley Road and 2935 Conroy Road to permit warehouses on the prime corner in Ottawa's premier prestige business park. Let me take you back 30 years when the City of Ottawa, the pre-amalgamated City of Ottawa, was developing this park. These lands were not owned by the City of Ottawa, but the city started a rezoning application to remove warehousing use from this property for the purpose of recognizing that this was a prime focal point to their prestige business park. This was the prime corner in the park, the entranceway to this facility that the city was developing. And this facility has been developed over 30 years as a prime park. It has all kinds of embassies, of the Canadian Medical Association headquarters is there, Richcraft Homes headquarters is there, Muskoka Kitchens headquarters is there, the city's paramedic headquarters is there. In fact, the city's social services building is on this site, which will be torn down if this is approved for warehousing in that corner. Mr. Chown put up a slide this morning that I thought was very telling, and you have to know what you're looking for, but what he showed is the overall area, and I want to describe that for you, because what we have is the 417 to the east, and then we have the NCC, the brand new business park that was just opened as more heavy industrial and logistics for things like Rosedale Group and all of those where the market is going right now. West of the NCC brand new park that has plenty of space is the Hawthorne Business Park. It's a heavy industrial park. It has plenty of large-scale warehousing like this, and it has great access from Hawthorne Road to 417 without disrupting residential communities and commuters. If you go further west, you come to the Prestige Ottawa Business Park, a park never intended for this kind of large-scale warehouse use. And on that slide that Mr. Chown put up, you would see to the north in Councillor Cloutier's ward, residential. You will see to the south of that park in my ward and Councillor Meehan's ward beyond mine, residential. And sandwiched in between is this actually very nice business park that was intended to have uses that are not 24/7, that are not heavy industrial, that are not warehouse, that are not big truck generating uses. That's what it was intended for. And that was the vision, and that vision has been carried out. And I would invite all of you to go out and take a look around, cycle around that neighborhood, and you will see that 3 honking big warehouses at the primary corner do not fit. And I look at the new official plan, and the new official plan really breaks down the uses into 2 areas. The more mixed industrial, which is what the Ottawa Business Park is today, and industrial and logistics, which is really where the market is going in terms of the Rosedales and the Amazons and the big distribution centers. Those uses should not be in a prestige business park. Would you think of putting them in Canada North? No. Why would you think of putting them here, especially when there are alternatives? And I think as we move to our new official plan, we really have to start thinking about where we expect these uses to go, because after this pandemic, we have seen that people's habits have changed and the market has changed with it. And yes, this is an opportunity for this group who own this prime piece of real estate in that park to make a quick buck, but it doesn't work. You will have heard, I held a public meeting back in May, 45 people attended. Of the attendants in that meeting, all 45 were opposed to this application. I have received 20 emails in my office. All 20 are opposed. You, as members of Planning Committee, have received 31 written submissions from the community. All 31 are opposed. There is not anybody that thinks this makes sense at this location. And you heard from the presidents of the community associations today and from residents who told you that from a commuter perspective, from a cyclist perspective, from a pedestrian perspective, that these conflicts at that corner do not make sense. They don't belong there. So I am here to ask you, for all of those reasons, for the reasons that this isn't the right place for it, that it conflicts with the commuters, it conflicts with cyclists, it will conflict for the future forever. I'm here to ask you today to reject this application. It's not as if there's no place for this use. There are absolutely places in my ward that I would be happy to entertain these uses, but this location is not one of them. And this is, in my estimation, just poor planning. So on this Town Planning Day or World Urbanism Day, let's do the right thing for this community. Let's do the right thing for this city. Let's recognize the vision that we've had for that park and uphold it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deans. And with that, we've wrapped up questions and the wrap-ups. So let's go to yays and nays. Eric?
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
Yes.
Councillor Brockington.
No.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Cloutier.
No.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Chair Moffat.
Yes.
Chair Gower.
Yes.
7 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So that bylaw amendment is approved, a recommendation to council. Okay, so that's it for our held items. We have no in-camera items today. Are there any notices of motion? Any inquiries? Any other business? All right, then we are adjourned for today. Our next meeting is Thursday, November 25th. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Have a good day. everyone.
Recording stopped.